Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us today as a way of getting started. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Brian. Great to be here. So my name's Adam Jones. I am the VP of Sales for Thinkifik, a little company based up in Vancouver, Canada.
And doesn't sound like you have a Canadian accent. Is that, are you transplant?
I am very much a transplant. Yeah, I grew up in the UK,
Yeah.
just outside of Liverpool, and moved to Vancouver 10 years ago to have a look around and never left. Uh, yeah, so it's a great place to be.
It's a beautiful city. I used to work for a company up there a
Oh
long
yeah,
time ago. Yeah. And I was up there probably about 5 times and
nice.
had a great time every time. You know
Which
what?
uh, which company was that?
It's a company called Layer 7.
Oh yeah, I know them well. I know the CEO over there actually. Yeah.
Yeah, they got sold to CA.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't there long, but it was an interesting journey. And
Lonnie, do you know? Obviously, I guess you worked with
I
Lonnie
worked
then.
for Lonnie. Yeah.
Yeah. I know Lonnie. Yeah,
Yeah, he's
cool.
a good guy.
Yeah.
Hey, so what brought you to Thinkific?
So I'd been working in B2B roles for a while, and I'd worked for a payroll startup called Rise for 3.5 years. We built that sales engine up, and then I was with Agreement Express until kind of November last year. They were actually acquired, and my role there was very much building up the B2B sales team as well. Thinkific had really never had a sales team, and so who they were looking for was somebody to be able to come in and apply some knowledge in terms of what a B2B offering might look like from a value proposition, brand positioning standpoint, and then actually to be able to put in place a scalable B2B sales process and build up a team, which was kind of what my skill set was well suited to based on my experience. I met with Greg, the CEO at Thinkific, in around July, August, and I loved what they were doing, and it just seemed like a great fit. So I
Yeah,
came across.
it's a great market. And how far have you gotten so far? I mean, you haven't been there that long. I'm sure it was a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, a lot of strategy.
Yeah, so the first thing we had to do was work out, okay, well, what is the B2B offering, right? How do we take what we have and build something off the back of the Thinkific platform that's gonna work, and which markets it gonna work in? Are we going after huge multinational corporations? I can tell you the answer to that is no. Find a niche that we're going to be able to work in based on the use cases that we're seeing a lot of success with, and we've kind of identified the mid-market anywhere up to maybe maxing out about 1,000 employees, specifically looking at customer education, specifically looking at revenue generation. And so the first part of that was really zeroing in on what that looks like. The second was looking at our existing customer base. Who do we have? What type of success are they having for the companies who kind of fall into that gap? And it was a fair number of them. And then look at the leads. We were a very, very fortunate position, really. We're getting an incredible amount of leads actually through our website, companies in that space. And
Already.
so, yeah, it's made my job a lot easier. So the first thing to do was, okay, well, where's that low-hanging fruit? How can we take care of that? And then we began hiring in January. I just hired my fourth account executive, and then we have another 2 positions open a little bit later in the summer here. So yeah, it's moving along nicely, exceeding my expectations probably so far.
Cool. And, because I'm sure you must get leads and certainly into companies. What did you start to look for in reps? I mean, because it's kind of a different type of sale where it's really not worked out yet. And
Definitely. I mean, the way I look at sales is really we're just guiding people through the buying process anyway. The way I look at inbound leads is that people are a little bit further along that buying process. They've
yeah,
actually often kind of diagnosed that they have a problem to solve. Whereas when you're looking at an outbound team, we're looking for people who can help them diagnose, right? Where we want to
yeah,
get ahead of it, help them, show them that there's actually a problem to be solved. So I find that the kind of the solution focused sellers work particularly well with inbound, being able to discuss with the lead as they come in, what the idea of the problem is, and often a lead will come in with the problem they're facing, and they've already worked out the solution, and they already know everything, and it's our job really to kind of be able to question that and ensure that we're helping them, point them in the right direction. So very much consultative selling rather than in the past, I've, maybe looked more for the hunter side, the people, and that's ironic because I've just hired a rep called Hunter. But it's already confusing.
By surname.
No, so by first name. Yeah, exactly. So, that's the kind of the differential I made, when I was looking at the tangible skills and talents. It's not somebody who's gonna necessarily be like that kind of hunter methodology. It's more, okay, let's put the customer first. Let's be able to take our time, good technical understanding of the product, good technical understanding of the problem, combine those two things and guide them through the process. And so far we've seen, great success with that. We exceeded our target this quarter, which was quite an aggressive one. And so just helping people gets results.
Well, I can see how that would be really good in your market, but I can also see that you're in a very crowded space. Not that your product, and I use your product, so I know it's really good, but there's a lot of products out there.
Yeah, there absolutely is. One of the things that we found is that it is quite a crowded market, particularly upstream.
Yeah.
You get up to the companies like the Docebos of this world, the Thought Industries, who really entered the market around positioning themselves as this kind of enterprise LMS. And a couple of things that the observations that I've certainly made and our team has made is a lot of the time with those bigger companies, there's quite a few barriers to get set up. There's a fairly substantial learning curve in terms of how to understand how to actually build on an LMS. And what often happens is one or two people in an organization understand it, but that's kind of it. And so everything falls onto them. Thinkifik has an advantage because we were built for the man on the street like yourself to go in and build a course in a matter of hours. Yep. And so when the UI is focused around that, it gives you a bit of a competitive advantage there just in terms of barrier to entry. The second part of it, which has been really interesting from a value proposition, is we're coming from the bottom of the market, as it were, which is fairly commoditized. You've got your Teachables and your Kajabis and some other great products out there, which very competitive, but have driven the prices down a little bit. So when we're entering into the mid-market, we can actually offer a very competitive starting point. And not all companies are ready to dive in at a $50,000 a year investment. Some are looking for something in the middle. And I think that's our sweet spot. And that's where we've already had quite a bit of success.
Yeah. So is a lot of your job kind of working with reps to make sure they're working on the closable deals where they're not dealing with the elephant? And right, because they could just get sucked up in some huge company, and at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. When I came in, we actually had a fairly substantial deal on the table with a large banking institution, and they were so keen to use it. Right, they'd vetted it. They'd even gone on and self-serve, built their own course, loved the platform. We're going to pay us about $75,000 a year, which is a big deal for us. The problem was, from a security and compliance standpoint, the more we dug into it, the more that it was digging into our margins. And not just through the sales process, but also once you're live, I've worked in a lot of organizations, and I find if you take on a company that is too big for you, you're not just eating away at your margins during the sales process, the implementation, but often what will happen in a year or two, they'll churn anyway, and it was all for nothing. And so I think it's really, really important. There's one lesson I've learned over the years. It's stick to your guns, stick to your niche, know who you can help, know who you can't help, and don't be afraid to say no regardless of how big the deal is.
Yeah, and that's a hard lesson to learn because it sounds so enticing. You look at your dashboard and you got this huge deal and you got a champion there and it all sounds great. But, all of a sudden they come back with all these requirements that only you would do that for them. No one else needs it. And
exactly.
It distracts the engineering team, and the rep gets locked on it because, it's so enticing. And I think it's hard as a sales leader to keep everybody focused on the things that match what the company is good at, and want to do. Yeah.
It's a very enticing kind of carrot, isn't it? When you see that, $100K dangling in front of you to turn your back on that it's one of the more difficult things in sales. But just in a way that, your reps shouldn't spend too much time on very small deals, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You have your sweet spot. You can't do everything well. Nobody can. Maybe Google will try, but most people
not a
can't.
startup, right?
Yeah, exactly. They got the resources. So, you have to be focused. And I read Lemkin's Impossible to Inevitable about 5 years ago, and there's a couple of chapters at the beginning about a niche and nailing your niche.
Yeah.
And that's really the way I approach any sales team and any sales problem.
That's it. Otherwise, you become kind of a consulting group or a software development group for one big company. So either you get acquired or the market just keeps going while you're sticking with that one client. Now, what's the market for reps like up in Vancouver? I got to believe it's pretty tight.
It is pretty tight, and particularly with U.S. companies obviously coming in, the U.S. dollar makes it even more competitive.
Yeah.
I think we're in a very fortunate position. There's not many companies like Thinkifik and that I've been a part of from a culture standpoint. You have to go to the Glassdoor and take a look, and it's literally 5 stars across the board. I've never seen so. We have a great reputation in town for building a really strong, fast-growing, well-run company. Very transparent in the right areas. Now, with that said, it is still very competitive. And so, we're very proactive in ensuring that we have a real backlog of strong candidates. We're doing lots in the public eye all the time from an employer branding perspective to ensure that, when people are thinking of looking for a job, that Thinkifik's one of the names on their list. And those are the things that allow us to kind of stay ahead a little bit, I would say. With that said, we've got about 35 positions open right now across the I can tell you that at the top of that list is a recruiter. It's definitely it's a good challenge, but also something that we have to give a lot of thought to and ensure we stay ahead of the game.
And are you looking for pure entry level, or are you looking for how much experience would you ideally like?
Yeah, I think really the roles right now, we have two different levels really. We have kind of your SDR, BDR, who's going to be coming in and qualifying the leads. That's very much the entry level. We then have a small business account executive role, which is generally about 1 to 2 years in terms of experience. And then we have more of a mid-market role, and we're looking at about 3 to 5 for that. Overall, that's where we are right now. One of the things I've found is, you're bringing in, and because the deals aren't that big, so you're bringing in a full enterprise rep right now who's been selling massive deals. They're going to be disappointed.
Right.
So I think we're in a really, really strong position for the reps who want to come in, high paced, probably close in 10 to 15 deals a month, varying from kind of a couple of grand a year or up to 15, 20 grand. And at the really high end, maybe a 50, 75K deal. But, that's the role. And it fits great for those young up and coming salespeople who are just keen and want to close deals.
And what have you learned in hiring salespeople? Let's talk about not the SDR, but kind of the sales rep, the quota responsible for closing deals. I'm sure you've found a pattern of people who will be successful versus people who either don't like it or it's not a match for their personality or skill set.
Yeah, I definitely have. And, I've read 100 books over the years. What to look for. And if you read enough of them, you'll go insane because there's so many contradictions.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've become cognizant of is to look for patterns. Just because somebody has a bad experience in one role and doesn't hit a target, for example, or doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad salesperson. They could have just been in a really, really difficult situation. Right. However, if I find someone who's been in 3 or 4 difficult situations, then, you tend to think, okay, well, is that the situation or is that the person? I think I certainly look outside of just being able to sell. Yeah. Sales culture is changing in my mind. The bro culture you read about a lot, which I've certainly been a part of in other roles and seen and witnessed firsthand. For me now, I'm looking for a more well-rounded sales team. I do think that a lot of the fundamentals of sales are still the same from when I got into the game, but I do think things have changed a little bit. And so now I'm always looking for not just a sales team who's going to be able to achieve their objectives, but who's going to actually be able to contribute to the company across the board. And so, yeah, there are a couple of the things that I look for. I definitely hire based on talents. We have a very thorough interview process, which, we hire slow. I've worked with companies who will hire, 20 reps at a time, knowing that 10 of them will fail. Really don't believe in that. I think that if you're going to invest your time into somebody and they're going to invest it into you, then you owe them to really give them a shot and ensure that, you're positioning them for success. And I often think those big hiring parties are a bit of a waste of everybody's time. But.
Yeah, and I would think it would be, I don't want to minimize it, but easier in your type of sale where you've got inbound. I think the real challenge is, are they really going to do something, or are they just investigating the market? You get lots of alternatives. Are you able to, what I call lock out the other vendors? Are you able to guide them through an evaluation process, get that technical sale, and then guide them through the economic sale? As
Absolutely.
Opposed to, the hounding to get 15-minute demo, get a proposal, and then hound it through the process. Because I don't think it's that type of sale.
It's definitely not. And I mean, I use the kind of the medic qualification.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar. So really we're looking at right off the bat, what is the impact that they're looking to achieve, and can we identify that? And is that impact something that's impending right now? Or is that something that they're, kind of casually looking at for, the next 12 months, which is the killer of all salespeople. And once we've got that impact, and I mean like the real, like I always say, no impact, there's no deal. What's the why behind it? And then, yeah, certainly, who you're looking for, and is this going to be a champion who can actually help you carry this forward? And you have those two things right off the bat. That's when I think you can look at kind of qualifying that as a real opportunity that you can move forward. If not, one of the great things about Thinkifik is we're in a really fortunate position from a product standpoint. I've worked for companies where people ask for a sandbox and there's not much you can do. Thinkifik, we can give a sandbox out for a period of time to get in there and test it for yourself and let the product almost sell itself. And my reps can kind of give them a call every couple of weeks, see how they're doing, put them in contact with other users, we have 40,000 course creators worldwide, so there's no shortage. So the product does in some ways speak for itself and makes it quite easy for those longer period sales. With the way I would look at it is, if we can identify somebody who has a real kind of tight timeline, good project, they've identified the problem, they're ready to move forward, they have the executive buy-in, and we can work out what that decision process is, that's where I want my team spending their time, not going through a 4-month deliberation process of, it's good for us to be in early and help them define what the technical criteria that they're looking for is and the problem they're looking to solve. And it's good for us to nurture those leads. But that's what they are. They're leads. They're not opportunities.
Yeah. And what's your red flags for deals that you just know aren't a match? If you get like an RFI, RFP type thing, or if you see somebody that's not in your wheelhouse that you're competing against. And
a pretty hard line on RFPs. If I didn't write it or we didn't write it, then we're not answering it because somebody else did. Generally that's the way I would approach them, unless there's a really compelling one that we've been in contact with. Actually, we did have an RFP recently though, who sent us over the RFP, and I'd never heard of them before, but I looked in our system and they had been trialing the system for 6 months without us even knowing. So we inadvertently helped them write their RFP. So I answered that one. What do we look? Red flags. So, first of all, we have a lot of companies who are coming in who are a bit smaller. So it's important for us to work out what their use case is and really what their intentions are in year 1, year 2. And if it is, a solopreneur who's got lofty plans, or, a small business who, that's great. And we want their business. We absolutely want to work with them. But it's more a case of, look, they can guide themselves through that journey. They don't need, a full program. give them a trial for 30 days and they can get in there. And, we have a great success process, which will guide them through it. So really identifying what their goals are in that first year, what their actual use case is. And alternatively, looking at the bigger end as well, if it is a large financial institution, if their timeline is over the next, we had a company this week and they said, yeah, we're actually actively researching for a potential project launch in September 2020. And I said, okay, well, we're happy to help you, but talk about planning, forward planning, and they're a big organization, and so we'll work with them and we'll nurture them. But that's not a deal, right? Like, there's no opportunity there today.
Yeah.
Then there's a couple of there's 3 or 4 things within the product today which, like, some outdated kind of content types. There's several questions that I know that if we ask them at the right time and the answer goes a certain direction, that we're probably not going to be able to help. And so it's just making sure the reps are armed with those questions, and they're not obviously disqualifying too early, but at least getting an understanding of what we're getting ourselves into.
And how much friction do you get? Because as you get bigger and bigger into these deals, there's going to be these one-off requirements. And how do you judge which ones to go to product management with and which ones not to?
So the way we do it is we use product build. And, obviously the fight for the development resources never ends. Out of those 35 positions, you'll probably notice about 20 of them are programmers. And so the way we do it is we don't build products for a specific customer. We don't build features for a specific customer. That's not the way it works. What we do is we collate all of the information that's coming to us in product board. We tag it. We can compare the kind of the size of the customers we're talking to, the actual the economic impact it will have. How much of a percentage of our customer base will the features apply to, and then we tie that into our overall kind of ongoing strategy and how it fits in. And so we don't get involved with dealware. If 20 customers come and say, hey, we need a Salesforce integration, then we're probably going to build a Salesforce integration because there's enough of a need and enough of a demand, and then there's also an outlooking market opportunity as well. So that's the way we approach it. Having been a part of companies, again, bigger companies, bigger deals who fall into that dealware trap, and have 50 different implementations happening, and every one needs a specific feature to be built. It's just a nightmare. So I kind of learned the hard way on that one.
And what is your challenge as a sales leader between now and your anniversary at the company? I'm sure you had goals that were both set for you by the board and the leadership team, as well as your personal ones. There's obviously
the challenges at Thinkific are interesting because it's resources, really. We obviously have a very successful core business, which is growing at a fairly good rate. Now, we overall, as an organization, we want to increase that growth rate. So when we're at it, we're exploring, obviously, the enterprise side, which is my team. We have our partnership side, when we're really growing in that area as well. We have our technology platform, which people are building on top of, as well as kind of the core business and keeping the lights on and everything like that. So the challenge from my side is more on just ensuring that we're moving in the right direction and we're able to continue to build things that are usable and are going to help us sell to the mid-market and improve their experience. So it's prioritization, it's resources. Probably a lot of VPs of sales out there face exactly the same thing. If we have those things, then obviously over time, lead generation is, if you're feeding enough leads into the pipeline, you're generally going to be fine. We know what our closing percentage is. We know what's going to come out the other end. So the other area will be hiring in marketing and ensuring that the lead, as we bring more customers on, that we spread the word around the brand, that we increase the number of leads coming in, so we can ensure that as we hire more people, there's enough leads to go around.
Cool. And for those who are listening, do you have openings outside of Vancouver, or are they all in Vancouver?
In Vancouver for now. We have remote openings on our support team. I think because it's such a new sales team, I made the decision early to say, look, let's keep it together for the first couple of years here, and while we're working this thing out and what it can be. But I think in the future, absolutely, there'll be I've always managed remote teams, and I think that we can certainly look to expand it globally.
Cool. And where can people go to connect with you?
You can get me on Twitter. It's AdamJones85. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just quick search. There's not that many Adam Joneses out there, so I'm sure you'll find. In fact, I think we've got an American footballer, a baseball player, a rock star. I'm the least well-known Adam Jones.
Just go to the bottom of the Google page.
Yeah. Just keep scrolling, and eventually
you'll find you.
If you ever have any questions, I'm always happy to help. And any roles that are open are always available on the Thinkifik website as well. So please go check it out. And if you're ever interested in learning more about e-learning or building your own course, give me a shout, and happy to help.